Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, Thursday the 6th of July. My name's Caleb Tomlinson. I'm the Councillor for Banbury West and I am the Chair of this committee. Committee members and members of the public are reminded that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. Let's treat each other with the due respect. If you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public who has registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of 4 minutes. You will be timed and I will confirm when 4 minutes runs out, and you should then tie up and turn your microphone off. Voting will be undertaken by an electronic vote. Yeah, everything up and running. And the outcome of the vote will then be confirmed by our legal officer, Taz, once complete. If you have mobile phones with you, please, can you put them on silent mode? Thank you. We're not anticipating a fire drill tonight, but if the alarm does go off, it does mean we will have to evacuate the building, and the fire exits are behind you, and we meet on the grassy area on West Paddock. Okay, if I can now ask everyone to introduce themselves, we will start with the young lady to my left.
Good evening. My name's Tasneem Safdar. I'm the Legal Services Team Leader and will be assisting the committee tonight.
Ben Story, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, Kath Unsworth, Councillor for Broadfield Ward.
Good evening, Wesley Roberts, Councillor for Buckshire and Wood, and standing in behalf of Councillor Matthew Farnworth for Seven Stars.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith, representing New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, Councillor Harry Hancock, Broad Oak Ward, Pemberton.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Will Adams and I represent Middlefirth and Pemberton.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Molyneux, Ward Councillor for Samlesbury.
Good evening, Hayden Williams, Ward Councillor for Leyland Central.
Good evening, Councillor Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Elaine Stringfellow, Councillor for Lostock Hall Ward and Vice Chair.
Good evening, Daniel Power, Senior Planning Officer.
Good evening, Janice Crook, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Debbie Roberts, Development Management Team Leader.
Good evening, Catherine Thomas, Planning Manager.
Evening, Elizabeth Hindle, Head of Planning and Enforcement.
Right, thanks for that, everybody. Okay, the apologies have actually taken care of themselves because we have the substitutes with us this evening. Do we have any declarations of interest on this evening's agenda? No. Okay, I have read the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of June and I agree with them. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stringfellow. Can we go to the electronic vote? If you weren't here, don't forget you need to abstain. Thank you. Okay, Taz, if you can read the scores on the doors, if you will.
Thank you, Chair. So those minutes are approved.
Okay, appeal decisions. Lizzie, if you'd like to report on this.
None to report, Chair.
That'll quick. Okay, agenda item number 6, land adjacent to the fields, Long Moss Lane, Whitestake. Daniel, if you'd like to present this item, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is an outline application with all matters reserved for 10 residential bungalows on the site. The site is outlined in red on the screen in front of you. This slide shows an aerial image of the application site, again with the application site outlined in red. It's to the south of New Longton on the northern side of Long Moss Lane. The site is allocated within the adopted local plan in policy G4 as protected open land, and there's certain criteria they've got to be met for us to permit development within the site. This slide is photographs taken along Moss Lane. So the hedge that you can see on the photograph on the left-hand side, that is the hedge of the application site itself. So I'll make reference to that later on as well. And the access is approximately there. You can see it slightly better on the image on the right-hand side. So the access is just by the black bin where the cursor is. And again, you can see the hedge along the front of the application site. These photographs show the access to the site on the left-hand side. Again, you can see the hedge on the left-hand side of the left image, looking into the site itself with a further hedge. The image on the right is taken within the site, looking towards the road and the access, basically towards where you are stood on the left-hand side of the image. So you can see the access to the site, albeit this is an outline consent, so with all matters reserved, so it's just for the principle of development, but that's the current access to the site with a hedge again along the roadside. These images are taken within the site, so this is the hedge within the site you could see from the previous photograph. So I'm stood on the left-hand side. The image on the left-hand side, I'm stood at the access to the site. And the image on the right shows the wider context of the field. This boundary you have on the left-hand side here, my cursor is the garden to a residential property. And you can see some residential properties on the rear of the site. As I said, it's an outlined consent, so we're just looking at the principle of the development. But as is required, they have submitted an indicative layout that shows the 10 retirement bungalows within the application site. They have shown an access, but again, this is just an outline for the principle of the development. As the application site is allocated as policy G4, there is a protection for that open land. And as outlined within the report, the requirements for that have not been met. So for the reasons outlined within the report, the recommendation is of refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for that report. Right, we have 4 members of the public who have registered to speak in objection to this application. Do we have a Mrs. Enns? You can't hear me? Can you now? Okay, Mrs. Enns, would you like to come and make your objections to the committee, please? Very unusual that Mrs. Smith, Councillor Smith, that people can't hear me. Never known. Okay, Mrs. Enns, if you press the speak button, you have 4 minutes, okay?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't need a mic, I can shout. I'm here to oppose this application on the grounds that this site is designated by yourselves, South Ribble Borough Council, as community use only and therefore not available for building houses on, nor is it suitable to build houses on. As a concerned resident of 53 years, I would like to point out that there are no suitable amenities at this end of the village for older people or anybody. It's a 1/4 mile to the nearest shop, which is a small corner shop. The doctor's surgery, which to my understanding is already oversubscribed, is approximately 1/2 mile along from the site. If you walk another 1/2 mile, you'll come to the heart of the village, where there are other shops, chemist, post office, hairdressers, etc., etc. The one thing we don't have is a bus. We used to have, but it's been stopped, and there's no bus route available either along Long Moss Lane or Sheep Hill Lane. which is the main road off Longmoss. A traffic survey was carried out on the last application for this area, showed that Longmoss Lane was already at full capacity. We're now overrun with speeding vehicles along it. As there are no pavements adjacent to the proposed building, and with little or no capacity to build them, then this would also endanger the residents entering and exiting the proposed build. On an ecological note, we frequently have sight of a barn owl, and I personally have seen a tawny owl. Both appear to settle in the trees which are on either side of the proposed site. In addition, we have a family of bats living close to the site, and I believe that all named species are protected. I trust that common sense will prevail and therefore look forward to a verdict of refusal. Many thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mrs. Ems. Do we have a Mrs. Dalgleish?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Dalgleish. Hope you can hear me. I'm here to support, obviously, Mrs. Ems and the others behind me. I've lived there for a long time and I know a lot of the problems. And whatever happens to this site, there are still flooding problems. For example, Longmoss Meadows, which is adjacent. Wait, you've not got your map up again. Longmoss Meadows is an adjacent site to what the plot we're talking about. It's an affordable housing estate bordering the east side, and it was very difficult to build due to all the flooding that happened. In fact, the first builder went bankrupt. He just couldn't cope with all the knee-deep mud and the machinery and everything else like that. It did eventually get sorted, and it was beautifully laid out and finished and everything. And then the rains came again. But if you look at, and this field goes at the same angle, there's a slight sort of deviation of the hill. And it flooded at the bottom end of it again because they'd filled in the ditches at the bottom end. There are only field drains in that area. They'd fill that in to make better gardens and so on, but it couldn't take it. So they had a problem in that, what should we do next? And they actually decided to have a soakaway built. And the landowner next door offered his field, which is the one that we're talking about now. So at the bottom end of that field, which is very, very boggy, at the bottom end of that field is a big soakaway with a drain going right across it to, if you like, my side of the field, because I have property at that side of the field next to a big drain running down the side of a tract that I live in. And there are 2 residential properties with me as well. So the flood area went across the field into the ditch at this side, and that ditch overflows hugely, and it floods from the ditch through the fence, which is a hawthorn hedge, and through the hedge and down our little track onto the main road. And it's like a river sometimes. It really is enormously wet and enormously boggy. And the back bit of my land gets so wet, I just putting my washing out is very difficult. But that's a problem. It was solved in that it helped Longmoss Meadows, but it shifted the problem across to the field itself. The soakaway doesn't work properly. I've never worked out exactly how a soakaway works, but it works. But anyway, it doesn't work properly, and it's very, very marshy. In fact, if it's not tended at all, and recently it's had sheep on it, but it forms a very natural reed bed, a wetland, if you like, and it's extremely boggy. That drain is 6 foot deep at my side. Well, not my side, but all down that little track that we've got. The track leads down to 2 more houses and a workshop, and is in danger of actually now being eaten away by this ditch flowing over the way it does. It's enormously difficult to cope with sometimes. And the hawthorn hedge this big hawthorn hedge that with mature trees, they're beginning to fall into it. So we're going to have problems there anyway. If more housing was built, the problem, it's not going to go away, but it's certainly not going to ease. And I would like you to take that into consideration, please. That's all I have to say, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Dalglish. Thanks very much indeed. That was 3 minutes, 57 seconds. Well done. All right, do we have a Mrs. Owen, please?
Good evening, Chair and councillors and committee. I'm Sheila Owen, and this is the view of an adjacent neighbour that will be affected by any development. The argument that these bungalows fulfil a need for appropriate housing for the elderly is flawed. Taken from Housing for the Elderly charity report, this states that retirement villages are generally designed as larger developments with 100 or more properties. However, we propose to apply the same principle to smaller sites. The proposal is to offer independent bungalows together with a range of social, sport and leisure facilities and retail outlets, sometimes together with high levels of care and support that can be adapted to residents' needs. The larger scale of retirement villages allows for the provision of facilities and care services that would not be viable in smaller developments. Schemes may offer properties to buy, to rent, or on a shared ownership basis, or a mixture of all three. The range of facilities and services available varies significantly between providers. This statement in itself effectively renders the entire proposal self-defeating. The proposal is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a retirement village, as very eloquently described within the Housing for the Elderly charity report, Guide to Retirement Villages in the UK. Other than offering independent bungalows, there are no social, sport, care or leisure facilities available locally. And this is why retirement villages are built on a far grander scale to include such facilities and hence a community spirit. As far as retail outlets are concerned, within the vicinity of Longmoss Lane, there is one corner shop, which is a half-mile walk away from the proposed development. Assuming that one is able-bodied or willing enough in all weathers to undertake a mile-long round trip to avail oneself of the goods on offer, and it's further still to the chemist, the post office, and the only social facility, all of them 1 mile away at the other end of the village. The alternative is to use a vehicle for any trip, assuming you can drive, can afford a vehicle, and the very expensive and polluting fossil fuel to power it, or alternatively, charge an even more expensive electrical vehicle, thereby negating any potential energy saving benefit from a home built to passive house standards. The nearest bus stop is on Station Road, New Longton. It's the same half-mile walk away, except on Sundays and bank holidays, when there is no service whatsoever. The opportunities for social engagement will be limited to neighbourly interaction, or not, as with any community.
That's your 4 minutes, Mrs. Owen. If you'd like to just finish the last sentence and We'll have the next objector, okay?
There is a strong argument to suggest that such a halfway house retirement village, where there are no communal or local facilities, therefore enforcing a commuter type existence, would lead to isolation and loneliness, the complete opposite of the retirement village concept. Thank you for allowing me the.
Okay, Mrs. Owen, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Do we have an Andy Fishwick? Okay, Andy, you might be a big fella, but you've still only got 4 minutes. If you press the speak button on the mic and you can come in, okay?
Is that better? Yes, you can have some of my minutes, don't worry. So, from the pictures you've just seen is my property, but you have to bear with me, this isn't my... So firstly, I'm Andy, resident of Mount Cottage and a local employee of Electricity North West. I am also speaking on behalf of the residents of the Fields who were unable to attend tonight. Their property is located at the other side of the proposed development. The proposed new access roads and high saturation of proposed new dwellings will impact on local residents' privacy and will completely alter the current street view of Longmoss Lane. The proposed plans show curved boundary. This is untrue to the existing straight boundary lines, which the curved boundary lanes show on the plans which cut through. It is unclear on the plans what will be creating the boundary between the new and existing. The proposed plans show footpaths which are 2 metres wide running along Longmoss Lane. This is incorrect as the footpath terminates at the side of Mount Cottage. It does not run in front of Mount Cottage or any further along Longmoss Lane. This would mean that there would be no connecting pavements to the proposed site, pushing elderly retired residents into the road. The drawings state parking bays of 3 metres by 6 metres, of which there will be 2 per dwelling. There is no additional parking listed on the site for visiting family carers or support workers for this proposed retirement homes. If these additional vehicles were required to park on Longmoss Lane, this would cause significant disruption to local residents, pedestrians and road users, as the lane is so narrow. It will be requested to see a report from the Highways Agency regarding local community concerns and also the access provision on the plans is sufficient for a site of this size in proximity to other accessways, particularly if there were plans to saturate the plot further, as architect drawings which are originally submitted with this proposal show more than 10 dwellings which are being opposed to this committee. I feel that the demands this proposal will put on the already outdated utility infrastructure have been overlooked, particularly regarding drainage, water and electricity. This could lead to negative effects on local residents as they look to go green for the future. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Andy, thanks for your presentation. Right, I do not have anyone wishing to speak in support of this application, but I do have the ward councillor, Councillor Mrs. Margaret Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, officers. I have here some photographs which I know you're not going to allow me to show, but they have been taken some while ago when we were here last time, and they actually show the flooding of the houses on Longmoss Meadow, and they also show the difficulty of traffic that is actually traversing Longmoss Lane, where we sometimes have tractors, which makes it very, very difficult because it is a very narrow lane. I've come here tonight to support my residents. As you can hear from them, they do feel very, very strongly about this particular application. We have been here for the ones that have been on committee for some years. We've been here a number of times. It's come in various guises of different types of housing, different amounts of housing, and all in all, we just feel that we hope that this will be the last time we're here with this particular application, because it really has gone on so many years. And also it has been before the inspector, I think, at least 2, if not 3 times, according to your paperwork. It certainly doesn't meet the criteria for G4, and therefore, as the report says, it should be refused. I think the history of this site is long and torturous, and I do sincerely hope, as I said, that this is the last time that we will be here discussing this particular application. I also would like to say that beyond this development that is actually proposed, although it is all in an outline, I do have grave concerns about the amount of land that is left at the back of the site, which is designated as amenity land for open use, for community use. I really don't understand why it is at the back of the site, and I don't understand how we're going to have proper access to it if it is for community use. It just seems a very strange thing to have done, to have put it there. And I'd just like that to be noted. So I do hope that, on balance, when you look at it all in the round, you will see that it isn't suitable for this development, and you will find in favour of the recommendation by the officer for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Smith. I always find it enlightening when a ward member actually comes to planning and speaks out in favour of the residents. Right, that is every member of the public, the agent stroke applicant not turned. So I've heard Councillor Williamson has intimated he wants to speak. Councillor Adams has intimated he wants to speak. So, and then Councillor Mullinor. So Councillor Williams, then Councillor Adams, then Councillor Mullinor.
Thank you very much, Chair. A bit loud. Right. Just been looking at this. Whilst it's very commendable that retirement bungalows are something that is in need, they've also got to be in the right place. So looking at this particular location, I think Mrs. Owen spelt it out fantastically well, in the fact that there are effectively no amenities for older people here. It's 1/4 mile to the shops. And Mrs. M said the same thing. Doctors are 1/4 mile away. The village is a mile away. The whole point of a retirement facility is, as Mrs. Owen has said, that it is a community that is supported, and is very, very difficult for support and transport to get this here. So looking at the report in paragraph 9.5, it's like inappropriate development. The residential retirement properties constitute inappropriate development. The main thing though is that's sort of a subjective thing. There's no facilities and things like that. The main thing that this is here is the actual site itself. It's policy G4. It is protected open land, and the only 3 reasons why you can build on it, and that is if it's required for the purposes of agriculture. Well, clearly it's not, because there's no sheep, no cattle on it. It's retired people. These are appropriate to the rural area. Well, it's not been farmed. It's there for residential purposes and involves the reuse of existing buildings, and it clearly isn't. It's a green field with an access. It's protected land. This site has come forward. Look, obviously it precedes my time as a councillor, but it's come forward numerous times and numerous planning inspectors. I can't see any other reason any other conclusion we can come to than that of the officers, which is that we refuse this application. So I propose that we refuse it.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Williams. So that's the proposal for refusal. Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the people that spoke as well. I thought you all spoke very eloquently and put across your points very well. And thank you also to Councillor Smith for putting her point across. It always helps us, I think, in terms of a committee when we get local members turning up and putting their view across. I think sometimes we get applications which are quite complex and quite difficult in terms of trying to be pragmatic and trying to find a way forward. With this application, I don't think that is the case. I think this is fairly straightforward. I agree with all of the comments which have been spoken about tonight. I think it is wholly inappropriate. So on that basis, I would like to second refusal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think most of what I was going to say has been said. The application site is allocated as protected land. Even if that wasn't the case, and you were looking at buildings of this sort, no bus routes, away from everywhere, it doesn't make sense anyway. So for me, I'd just go along with what the officers for refusal. And obviously we've got a proposal and a second anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Molyneux. Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's all been said, to be quite honest, so I won't go on too long. This is obviously a piece of land that shouldn't be built on. It has been to this committee many, many times over the years, and I've been sat at that side of and spoken many, many times of why it shouldn't. It's been to appeal, I don't know how many times. So nothing to add except we support the officer's report. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other proposals by refusal? No? Well, in that case, I'm going to shut down this debate quickly because everything's been said. And I agree with you all and all your comments. So can we go to the electronic vote, please? This is for refusal of building 10 bungalows on protected land in South Ribble.
Chair, so the committee have decided to refuse outline plan permission for the erection of 10 bungalows in addition to open space amenity for the following reason: that it is contrary to policy G4 of the South Ribble local plan, and the proposal constitutes inappropriate development and would have an adverse impact on the character, appearance and openness of the locality. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. Okay, so that has been refused. If you've just come for that one item, if you'd like to leave the meeting now, but if you want some more entertainment, you're quite welcome to stay. Okay, thanks for that. Let's move on to agenda item number 7. That's Seven Stars County School, Peacock Hall Road, Leyland. And Janice, if you'd like to present this item, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the application relates to the Seven Stars School on Peacock Hall Road in Leyland. So this aerial view shows the existing school site, its playing fields, to the southwest, relationship to residential properties along Peacock Hall Road and also along Teal Close and Merlin Grove to the northwest, and then the St Anne's School to the north there. So this plan shows the existing site layout. There's currently 2 single-storey school buildings on the site. The application proposes 1 building, which is part single-storey, part 2-storey, together with car parking, landscaping, the formation of a mugger, which is a multi-use games area, the installation of temporary classrooms and associated works following the demolition of the existing buildings. So this view just shows the proposed building will be to the northernmost, where the northernmost existing school building currently is. And this just demonstrates the relationship between the school building and the properties on Peacock Hall Road. So this shows the proposed main southeastern elevation facing the residential properties. The building's part, as I've mentioned, part single, part 2-storey and has flat roofs and will be constructed in brickwork with render panels. Now there are windows at first floor opposite the residential properties, but these achieve the normally required spatial separation distances to prevent overlooking and loss of privacy. And this is just a street view that shows the building and the existing landscaping, just to give an idea of how it would be viewed. So neighbouring residents have raised concerns over parking issues caused by the school, advising that parking is a huge issue, with parents blocking driveways, coaches for swimming lessons and teacher parking all causing problems. But the proposal has parking for 18 vehicles in the main car park, plus 2 mobility spaces, and then there's a further 3 spaces for minibuses and a send drop-off area, sends the special education needs and disabilities area, which is within the school. Curbside parking will remain as existing, and county highways have no objection to the level of parking, and the site meets the adopted parking standards that are in our local plan. So this is the southwestern elevation, which shows the nursery and reception area, the external space for those, which has a canopy over. Now beyond this is the minibus and send drop-off area that I mentioned. And then also proposed as part of this application is the formation of a mugger, and this shows the setting out of the mugger and the proposed fencing around it. Environmental health have some concerns over the proposed community use of the mugger and the potential to affect residential amenity in terms of noise, and therefore condition 19 has been included to restrict the hours of use of the mugger. And Sport England and the school head are accepting of the proposed times. I've checked that with them. So to the south of the mugger is a temporary classroom. They'll be located there. The development will be in phases, and the proposed siting of the new building enables a phased demolition of the existing building, enabling the school to decant into the second of the existing buildings, together with 3 temporary classrooms within this building on your screen now, and therefore remain operational throughout the construction phase. And then once completed, the temporary classrooms will be removed and the remaining existing building and hard standing will be demolished. So this slide shows the proposed landscaping for the site, which includes things such as a habitat area, wildflower meadow, trim trail, native tree planting, together with grass and hard playing pitches. So just in a little more detail, the habitat area includes a wildlife pond, willow tunnel, log pile, native tree and hedge species, raised planting beds and an outdoor learning area. Now, Greater Manchester Ecology Unit, who are our advisors in matters of ecology, have advised that the proposed landscaping, together with the habitat area and wildflower meadow, will result in an overall net gain in biodiversity. So other issues raised during the planning process which have been resolved with the inclusion of conditions relate to meeting the national governing bodies of sports design guides, impact on the community use of the playing field during the development, and requirement for a community use agreement as advised by Sport England and as reported in section 9.6 of the committee report, and also flood risk and drainage, and that's reported at section 9.8 of the report. So with these and other conditions imposed, it's considered that the proposed development is acceptable and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for your excuse me. Thanks for your detailed presentation, Janice. Okay, we don't have any members of the public wishing to speak in objection to this application? We don't have any members of the public wishing to speak in support of the application. We have the ward member, Councillor Jane Bell, who would like to speak on behalf of her residents.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to represent the residents of Peacock Hall Road who live directly opposite the school. And whilst they agree that all children should be taught in a safe, warm and fit for purpose building, they do, however, have concerns. Reading plans is very different from the finished result, as I know to my cost. A purpose-built school for children with more support needs was built across the road from me, and I now have the view of a gable end that looks like a prison and the back of the building where all the rubbish is. So I do understand what happens when you look at a plan and it doesn't quite look the same when it's built. They have two main issues of concern, and I'm very a bit sad really that nobody's here, because I think they would have been very reassured by what Janice has just said, you know, about the building and the views and all the rest of it. I think they would have been very reassured. But basically, parking. That always comes up outside school. The schools are very aware of this. The head is very good at being helpful and issuing reminders to parents through social media and reminders in newsletters. But it's still an issue, and it may become more of an issue with more frequent use of the new football pitches and this multi-use thing, which will. And at the minute, it is quite bad because it's used at weekends and in the evening, and the traffic, you know, blocks the drives and parking on both sides of the roads. And apparently they could open a gate and they could use the parking that's already there, but that doesn't seem to happen. So they are very concerned that when there's more use of the facilities, it will be much worse. So that's one thing. And another concern, and this came from the people who live across the road, they were very concerned about the lack of privacy once it becomes a two-storey building, and whether or not the light into the houses would, you know, just not be there anymore. I did discuss this with Janet, and again, I think if they'd have been here, they'd have been reassured. They are not just concerned; they were quite worried, extremely worried. And a suggestion from residents, and can I just say this is from residents, that could the building be reconfigured to have the second story not directly opposite the houses but to the side, so that they wouldn't lose privacy or light. That came from a resident. Some of the residents are a bit unwilling to come tonight because they thought that as it was a school it would just go through without any problem and their concerns would not be taken into account. So they needed a voice. So I'm their voice, and these are their concerns. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Bell. As eloquent as always. Okay, right. I am now going to bring this application. Oh no, we have the agent, Katie Delaney, with us this evening. Okay, Katie, you have 4 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hopefully I won't take up the full 4 minutes. I don't want to repeat what Janice has already reported to members, but hopefully I can provide just a little bit more context. As Janice has said, the school is currently in a poor state of repair. It's not fit for purpose, and it's also highly inefficient in terms of its energy usage. This new building will ensure that there will be an excellent learning environment for pupils in an energy efficient building, and it will vastly improve the street scene. And Janice showed a slide there where the trees along the frontage are largely retained. So I hope that provides some reassurance to residents in terms of that screening. And the overall height of the building isn't vastly higher than the existing buildings that are there at the moment. I just wanted to mention that we did carry out extensive consultation prior to submission. We delivered leaflets to thousands of residents. In the end, it was half of Leyland because we'd drawn the boundary wide to try and cover the catchment for the school. We received only one response from an immediate neighbour. So I understand and appreciate the comments from the residents, but we didn't get any of those comments prior to the submission, or we could have directly responded. We would always try to do that. And again, in terms of the traffic and parking, Janice has already mentioned, but just to reconfirm, the number of pupils and staff isn't going to change here. It's going to remain a one-form entry school. And I've spoken with the head teacher about the occasional problems with parking. And the ward councillor mentioned that the head teacher does deal with those as newsletters that go out. And I think there are, unfortunately, some specific parents that might be the usual culprits that the head teacher liaises with directly. But in terms of something that was just raised now, there is, in terms of the community use and the use out of hours, I think the suggestion is that can be a parking issue there, but there is a condition proposed for a community use agreement, so we can consider that as part of that community use agreement that hasn't yet been drawn up. So in terms of including parking as part of that community use, I'm sure that that's something that the school can offer once that's agreed under that condition. So all I would say again is that the attainment improvements for the children of this school can only be improved if the fabric of the building's improved. So on that basis, I would urge you all to support your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Katie. Right, open up to committee, and I have Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bell, for coming again. Gives us good insight in terms of what residents are thinking. I think this is a really exciting application, and I appreciate the concerns raised by Councillor Bell. But it kind of made me want to go back to school, which wasn't that long ago. But I think where this school is in terms of it's one of the most deprived wards within our borough. And obviously we all understand the challenges which comes to that. So I think the impact that this plan application will have, not just on the children currently there, but the children that will be utilising at the school in years to come, will have an amazing impact in terms of that. I like the kind of the biodiversity element to this as well. I think that's really, it's obviously really current in terms of what's in the media at the moment. But it's the right thing to do as well in terms of outdoor education for children. I think the issues that Councillor Bell raised are legitimate ones, and I think in terms of what the agents just said about if we can factor in the community use in terms of using the car park, I think if we can put that in, if we're able to do that, Chair, if we're able to put that in within the application or the conditions, sorry, then I would like to propose approval. Because I think it's really positive. I think it should be something that this council and this committee should support. And I think it's just going to benefit such a wide range of people in that community. So I'm very happy to propose approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. So that's for approval with conditions, yeah?
Yeah, the conditions about the car park for community use. Thank you. Okay,
Janice, if you can put that in there. Councillor Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's right that the conditions have been put onto this application, and I think they're the right conditions for that, for the mugger. I also think that this development will enhance, certainly going to be much better for the school. It's going to enhance the school, and I do feel it's going to enhance the community as well. So I would second Councillor Adams. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Molyneux. Councillor Williams, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'd just like to say this looks like a brilliant scheme. Obviously, we've got a good net gain on biodiversity. Children are there to learn from a sport aspect, from an academic aspect, and also about life as well. And obviously we're keeping the existing screening of trees in front of the in front of the properties that are directly affected. It seems to be enough of a distance away. As regards the parking, whether the school gets built or not, those problems still remain. If this isn't enhancing the problem, isn't making the problem go away, the problem is still the same. So whether this school gets built or not, that problem will still remain anyway, and it's not going to. And it's the same size of school as it was before, as it would just been issued by the agent. So we're not actually creating a problem as a result of it. So I would wholeheartedly support approval.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not against the proposal whatsoever. It says in the report that the school's gone quite dilapidated and run down over the years, and it does need improving, in which case the improvements to the building and the conditions and the feel of the school obviously will enhance the education of the children. But I am very concerned about the times of the mugger, with it being used for community use. I think we need to be very tight on the time so it's not affecting the residents as little as possible. It says in the report that floodlighting needs to be installed, only controlled by South Ribble. So I'm quite keen for those floodlights to be that way, under control of South Ribble, as to whether they're suitable to be installed or not. Bearing in mind that in the winter months, if it's open 9 till 6, it's going to be dark from 3 o'clock, so the floodlight is going to be on, and it's going to be affecting the residents perhaps. So I think we need to have strong conditions about the control of the positioning and the lighting that's put in there, so it affects the residents as little as possible. I'm a bit concerned, I'm a lot concerned about the parking problem as well. I think the school needs to do something about this to help the residents in total. But on the whole, if these conditions can be strengthened and put in, then I think it's a good application and a benefit to the local children in that area.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Councillor Mrs. Green. Lizzie, would you like to come in and answer some of those?
Sorry, Chair, it's Janice that wanted to come in.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was you. I thought you intimated it was you, but you're speaking into me deaf ear again. Janice, if you'd like to come in on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So, condition 16, which requires the community use agreement, already includes a sentence which includes car parking. So that's covered in that. So any community use agreement would need to include car parking provision. The use of the mugger, condition 19 restricts it till for 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 1 p.m. on Saturday. No use Sunday and bank holidays. And then there is no floodlighting, there's none proposed, or security lights, but condition 20, should they decide that they needed some, they would have to put any details before us. So that is already controlled by condition. That helps.
Okay, Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's quite exciting, really, isn't it? New schools going on, and the real people that will benefit, of course, are the students, the children of the school itself, because the better the environment they're being educated in, the better the education they will receive, I'm sure. So, yeah, fully supportive of it. I think it's really, really good. Councillor Williams pointed out that obviously there will be a problem with the car parking anyway. It's perhaps a bit of a shame when you have an opportunity that you don't create more parking, because that's every school in the borough really, really suffers from that. With regard to the mugger, I'm assuming, and it doesn't say in the report here, I don't think, but that the mugger will be for school use during school hours. So from that, after presumably 4 o'clock, or when the children leave, and you've got sort of no child protection issues, that the school will be selling that time on to the local community. I'm assuming that's what normally happens with schools. I don't know whether you can confirm that or not, but either way, I think it's a good report, and we're fully supportive of it. Thank you.
Just to confirm, yes, the mug will be for school use in the daytime. The community use element will be after school hours and Saturday mornings, which would be part of the agreement.
Okay, thanks for that, Janice. Right, okay, I'm going to draw this debate to a close. We've had a proposal for approval from Councillor Will Adams, seconded by Councillor Peter Mullinor. Do I have any other proposals? No, so this is for approval. Can we go to the electronic vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So committee have decided to grant planning permission with conditions for the erection of a part single-storey, part two-storey primary school building, together with car parking, landscaping, formation of the multi-use games area, associated works, and the installation of temporary classrooms following the demolition of existing buildings. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. All right, quickly on to item number 8, Gables Farm, Lindell Lane, Hutton. At this stage, I would like to remind committee and members of the public that the following application will not be determined by committee tonight. The applicant has appealed against non-determination, with the planning inspectorate now responsible for making the decision on this application. The purpose of the debate this evening is to seek the view of committee on whether the council should contest the appeal or not. Debbie, if you would like to present your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You've just nicked half my speech.
What?
You just said half my speech. Right, Gables Farm on Lindell Lane, Hutton. The application is for a change of use and associated works from a 40-horse livery to a dog training centre. By way of background, we brought this application to committee in February 23 with a recommendation of approval with conditions. It was deferred for 2 reasons. One, to review conditions, and secondly, for officers to facilitate a meeting with the applicant and residents. Conditions have been reviewed for clarity, and we've added conditions 2 and 16. So it gives a little bit more control. But it was evident that there were significant changes needed to overcome residents' concerns. We gave the applicant a list of 5 of the main topics for concern, and it was clear when we discussed it with her that there was no compromise. There was no prospect of any compromise. On that basis, senior officers decided that there was no benefit to the meeting and that we shouldn't be delaying the determination. We brought the application back to an agenda for the 9th of March, but it was withdrawn on the morning of that meeting because we'd had notification of an appeal to the Secretary of State against non-determination. Non-determination is explained in your report, but basically, if we don't issue a decision within the statutory period or any other agreed time, the applicant can claim non-determination, and the expiry date on this one was the 13th of February. We have a valid appeal now, and the application will be determined by PINS, the Planning Inspectorate, and we got a start date for that this morning. As part of PINS determination, we need to send them details of the decision that committee might have made had it been able to. So you have 2 options for consideration tonight, as the Chair's already mentioned. The first is not to contest the appeal, so that's to take the recommendations of the report for approval with conditions. And the second is to provide an argument for PINS why the permission shouldn't be granted, on what basis and with reference to which policy. Today's agenda report is the one that would have gone to March committee, and it's to assist you tonight, but the decision isn't binding on the authority or on PINS. It's given in an advisory capacity for PINS only, and it's a committee member only discussion. Okay. The recommended conditions will also be sent to PINS regardless of your determination tonight. And again, PINS aren't bound by them, so they can change them as they see fit. So as a refresher, and for people who weren't there at the time, Gables Farm was a 40-horse livery yard used by Meisker College. It comprises, it's the site marked in red. the bits in blue are the rest of Myerscough College's site. It comprises a number of large agricultural buildings, fairly dilapidated and screened on most sides with trees and hedgerow. Access is on this western side, and at the rear there's a small former silage clamp that's walled on three sides, again screened by woodland at the back and by buildings at the front. Semi-rural but well-trafficked location, and the closest residential is Gables Farm here, which would be the applicant's primary residence if permission's granted. Squirrels Leap, which is 90 metres to the east, and properties in the west are around 70 metres away. To the south is open land, and to the north is the new John Horrocks Way, the bypass. Proposal is for, sorry, wrong plan. Proposals for change of use of livery are to a dog training facility. There's permission in 2005 for livery use, which restricts it to livery. Otherwise, this planning application wouldn't need permission. Works will be internal only, other than for 6 5-metre high floodlights, which you can see on the silage clamp at the back. They would face into the courtyard at the back, and they'd be screened by buildings and trees, so lighting wouldn't be visible from the road. The large building will be converted to 3 indoor arenas, this one here, with these smaller buildings used for equipment storage. There'll be no overnight kennelling or client dogs on site outside of business hours, and all dogs will be kept on a lead unless they're inside the building or accompanied outside by their owner. We've got several conditions to control different parts of the site in that respect. The business would be 3 people, 3 employees, each running hourly classes with a maximum of 6 people. The applicant's statement says that they would run 30 hours of classes each week. Now that's with a maximum of 18 dog handler pairs. I've averaged it out at 15 because not all classes will be full at all times, and that's 120 pairs a day, dog handler pairs. The applicants asked for very extended hours, including a cool-off period in the fields at the back, these fields, until 10 at night, which we don't think is reasonable. We suggest a reasonable compromise on reduced hours, which we secure by condition of Monday to Friday 8 till 9, Saturday 9 in the morning till 6 at night, and Sunday and bank holidays 10 in the morning till 5, with an extra half an hour closing up time for staff so they can lock up and get off site. But having regard to condition 4, now condition 4 separately would allow for use of the site for 12 weekends in a calendar year, with a maximum of 2 weekends per calendar month, between 9 and 6 at night. Temporary period of 18 months to allow us to keep an eye on the site and assess it. We can revisit it. They will be for nationally prescribed time training sessions, so they have to be fairly long opening times, but the turnover in people and dog numbers will be a lot less. In addition, the applicant proposes venue hire to approved professional trainers, small groups during the week. The applicant herself also hosts events, and she does about 48 days of those a year on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday, with a maximum of 8 people for a 2-hour class. There's lots of parking. Looks quite a cluttered site, but it's very open once you're inside. There's plenty of off-road parking for this one. Okay, just some photographs of the site. This is Gables Farm itself. This is the property that will become the applicant's dwelling, and this is the site here, just beyond this hedgerow. Okay, this is the site from Lindell Lane. It's an old photograph. The hedge is much, much higher now, but I couldn't get any decent photographs of it. This building's in the centre. These face Lindell Lane, and the one here where my cursor is the main stable cum arena building. Gables Farm's here on the right, and the access will be on the western side. And that's the access. That's an existing access. Nothing about that would change. And trees, hedgerows and frontage screening would all be kept. This is a view of the access from inside the site. So these are the frontage buildings behind the hedgerow on Lindell Lane. And this is the main stable. And the same picture, but facing into the site. So this is the main stable that we turned into 3 arenas. All these other open buildings will be used for storage. And Gables Farm, the dwelling, is here. So Lindell Lane runs along this frontage here. Okay, and that's the silage clamp at the back. The floodlights would run around the edge of this. This bit would be taken out, this fence. The floodlights would run around the edge, screen from the bypass by the trees at the back, and the main building is here, so it wouldn't be visible from the road. Okay, top building there's a few photographs, I do apologise, it's hard to describe. This is Gables Farm, the site's behind when I took the photograph, and the access is here, so Lindell Lane's here. All of the hard standing on this and surrounding all the buildings. There is a condition to lay it out for parking spaces, but it's already tarmac or concrete. It is all hard standing at the minute. At the end, where's it gone? There's a couple of slides missing off this presentation. In all, we sent 12 consultation letters out, and we received 454 replies in total. 215 objected. That's 98% within a reasonable baseline distance of Chorley, South Ribble and Preston, so central Lancashire, the people most likely to be affected. 239 people supported it. Now that's only 38% within central Lancashire, within that same baseline area. It's clear there was canvassing on both sides, and a lot of responses were from all over the UK, Ireland, Southern Ireland, so, which is why I've done a baseline of distance. The 4 main areas of concern: highways, light disturbance, ecology and noise. Highways, there's going to be a traffic increase, but when it's assessed against the site's existing lawful use, which could start again at any point without any other permission, the balance for Lancashire County Council is whether that increase is severe. The test set by the NPPF only permits refusal on highways ground if there is severity, and Lindell Lane is a well-used, well-trafficked road. As much as it's semi-rural, it is well-used, and LCC don't feel that the case is severe enough to warrant refusal. Ecology, we've had detailed ecological assessments, and subject to conditions, we're satisfied that there wouldn't be any breach of planning or other regulations. Same goes for noise. We've had noise reports supplied and discussed with the environmental health team and the applicant's noise assessor. When you take into account the site's topography, proximity to neighbours, the scheme's considered acceptable by 2 separate environmental health senior officers, and subject to conditions which protect amenity would allow a viable business on noise grounds is considered acceptable. Light, also subject to a timer condition for the floodlights, shouldn't have any impact on residential or natural environment amenity to the point where it warrants refusal. It's really clear that it's emotive and there's a lot of objection, a lot of support for the scheme, but taking all that out, taking all the personal feelings aside, there is no data or evidence reason why this scheme's not compliant with council policy, where it can be controlled by condition. And on that, on balance, we would recommend approval with conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Debbie, thanks for that presentation. Lots of wailing and gnashing of teeth on this one, isn't there? It's been kicked about so much, but we're not here to make a decision. We're here to give our views on the actual original application, which I thought was a good application personally, and if we can test the appeal, how much will that cost? I don't know. Councillor Adams, you intimated you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think for us as a committee to go against an officer recommendation, I think we've got to have very clear reasons why, and obviously under the planning law, which we would be able to do that. I think there's a very comprehensive report by Debbie again, and I thank her for it. I just think with this application, we will have greater power with the conditions which are set out here than we would if we didn't support or we went against the officer recommendation. So I think in terms of for the benefit of the residents, which clearly the objections last time were fairly loud and fairly clear, which is why I think the committee decided to defer it. I just think anything other than going with the officer approval tonight would actually impact the community in a more negative way. So there's nothing in my mind from the report where I would overturn any of anything that the officers have said within the report. And I don't think we as a committee, from my opinion, should contest this. And I think we should actually support the officer recommendation. I don't think there needs to be a proposal for approval, Chair, does there, or not? I think it's just our view of this tonight, isn't it? So I am minded because of the conditions which are set out in the report, and on the balance of trying to be pragmatic in this difficult situation, I would support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add a little bit to what Councillor Adams has just said, we were invited to go and view one of these sessions in, because I mentioned how difficult it was to imagine whether it would be a problem or not. I went along to one, and I can honestly say there was no noise. There were a lot of enthusiastic people there enjoying and bringing. There really wasn't any noise, and I looked to see if there were. I'm not aware of any complaints of any neighbours at the one at the equestrian centre, and this one will be indoors. That one was outdoors, so I think it would be actually quieter rather than noisier. So I just wanted to throw that bit. The other thing was the residents who were complaining were also invited to go along to that, but no one turned up, which I thought was unfortunate, really, because I think that would have put their minds at rest.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for your comment. So if this was before us tonight as a planning committee, how would you vote?
I would vote for.
For. So you would go with the recommendation of the officer?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Williams and then Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Chair. What we're talking about here isn't just a dog kennels where dogs are just left to fester while the dogs are left on the holidays, where people go on their holidays. We're talking about a professional training establishment here that is under strict controlled conditions. Well, the dogs are controlled for a start. It's limited. We've got time limited. We've got good conditions on here. And whilst there are some houses around. And looking at the map plan, the photograph above, I can't think of anywhere else in South Ribble we would rather put it. Anyway, as a bit of an aside, a bit of research, I've done a source on it. Apparently, there's a Freedom of Information Act request to Lancashire Constabulary, because everybody knows there's a neighbouring kennels, and obviously there's noise generated by a kennel. So I thought it'd be interesting to find out how many complaints there have been about how many in the last 5 years with regards to noise from the dog unit at Lancashire Constabulary. In the period of 5 years, according to Lancashire Constabulary, 2 incidents have been identified. So 2 in 5 years from Lancashire Constabulary is, I would consider, fairly minimal. So this is a more tightly controlled establishment. So had this been before me, obviously it's been before me, I would have voted for the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Unsworth, were you seconding Councillor Adams?
Is it a situation that we are? Oh, yeah. Yes, in that case I will do.
Okay, thanks. So I have a proposer and a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Mulliner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At the last council meeting where this came before us, I was of a mind for refusal, and I was sort of persuaded to go for deferral on the understanding that they could get together and the applicant could get together and come up with something, a good compromise in that way to help everyone. I don't think that's happened at all. I don't think the applicant's interested in doing anything except getting all that they want. And that reason I'm still of a mind for refusal. I understand what we're saying about, we've got some conditions. But for me, I don't think the applicant has done what we as a planning committee were expecting. And therefore, my thoughts would be refusal.
Okay, so you would contest the appeal, would you? Okay. Taz, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair, through you. So we'd actually need some arguments advanced around that. So what are the reasons for the refusal, please?
As I said before, at the last get-together, there were a number of reasons why we didn't want that. There was noise, and the dogs barking. Maybe, I know it was mentioned before about the handle well and all that, but that's easier said than done. For me, if you look back on that meeting, there was a number of conditions that came up that we could use. But certainly from a noise point of view and a residence, it's just not for me at the moment, that's all.
I just need specific, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Councillor Molyneux, but I think I need specific sort of policies that you're going to be referring to. And unfortunately, I don't have the minutes before me in terms of the previous meeting back in, I think it was February, March. So if you can perhaps give me some indication as to what the policies that you're relying on.
Thank you. Yeah, you were just about to bring me in, Chair, and certainly I'd be happy to second that refusal. And I would have. I did second refusal, but still would. So there's nothing in the report that I've seen the report, and I've read it that would actually change my view that I put forward at the last committee meeting. It's all on YouTube. I've looked at it twice over the last couple of days, and everything I said, I think I would stand by. I don't have any problem with that at all. And the reason is residential amenity. That's exactly what the residents are complaining about, residential amenity. And they've got to live with that. This business, and it is a business, which is fine. I mean, on the basis of if you don't know the area very well, but on the basis of it would appear ideal, but it is far from ideal, I have to say. I think I mentioned at the time 2,800 extra vehicle movements a week. Now, if that doesn't impact on the borough itself, bringing people in from the borough to drive through it, I don't know what would. So that's residential amenity to me, and it would also cover, I think, on G2, which is reuse and adoption of buildings in Greenbelt, and particularly on paragraph C there, and that a proposed development would not result in adverse impact in respect of noise, and it does, odours, which might be something, and emissions and traffic. So that covers it quite nicely, Chair, and I think we could put forward a good argument, the officers could put a good argument forward on policy G2, para C. So there's a mention about Lancashire Constabulary. I chuckle a little bit because I can see it from our house and our garden. We don't like to complain about the police too much. We complain about driving down Cage Lane when they're speeding. We can always tell the police because they've still got part of the uniform on. But the dogs have been there a long time. The dogs were there before we were there, so we moved next to the dogs, so we knew what we were getting. And I think it's a different thing. Every meeting we go to, people moan about the dogs, but don't complain too much. So that is the reason that no official complaints have gone in about the dogs. We try to get on with the police down there. They try to get on with us as neighbours. They can't always do that, but we accept them because, you know, we hope they're going to do a good job for us anyway. So those are the reasons. We can pick stuff up from the meeting itself, the previous meeting, but I'm hoping that would cover it. Chair, thank you.
Okay, Taz just wants to jump in for the moment, and then it'll be Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. From what I've heard of the comments made by Councillor Molyneux and Councillor Phil Smith, my indications are that it would be contrary to policy G2, but also policy G17. Okay, thank you. So that was a proposal from yourself, Councillor Phil Smith. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to totally agree with Councillor Smith and Councillor Molyneux. To me, it doesn't gel well that the applicant hasn't made any sort of effort whatsoever to discuss with the residents, or at least appease the people who live nearby. You would, wouldn't you, if you wanted your business to be successful and not affect anyone? To me, that's not a good intention of them just sort of putting a barrier up and saying, you know, we've nothing to discuss. To compare it with the police dogs, I don't think it's quite right. Yeah, police dogs are trained, but the actual fact of here saying that they need extra time for the dogs to cool off and wind down and calm down after the training session, to me sounds like the dogs are going to be very agitated, very excitable, perhaps noisy as well. And I mean, I'm not an expert on police dogs, but I don't think that is the case in police dogs where they're just trained up to control potential criminals, shall we say, or whatever they're trained to do. So I think it's a different thing altogether. So to me, I agree with the other councillors. I'm not in favour of this at all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mrs. Green. Right, okay, so we had, I'm going to close the debate down now. Yeah, you just have to, right, I'll allow it.
It was just a comment on Councillor Green's comment. I was told by the applicant that she did put leaflets through everybody's doors inviting them to the open day. So she did try to make some compromise there.
It's not actually a material planning consideration. Anyway, Councillor Smith, come on.
Just very quickly, residents have actually been somewhere else and viewed several of these, not that particular one and that industrial estate, but they have viewed several of them. Thank you.
Right, so we had a proposal not to contest the appeal proposed by Will Adams, seconded by Kath Unsworth, but then we had an amendment to contest the appeal and go for refusal on the policy G2 and G17 by Councillor Molyneux, seconded by Councillor Smith. So we are going, or did you want to come in, Lizzie, before we go to the vote?
Yes, Chair, if I can. I think if it does that we want to contest the appeal, then we need to just have a bit more of a conversation about the reasons.
Well, can we go to the vote first?
Yeah,
and see
I just wanted to just say that, yeah.
Yeah. So we're voting to contest the appeal and go for refusal on the grounds of policy G2 and G17.
Through you, Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I think the discussion has to be had around the actual reasons now, rather than once we actually go for the actual vote. So perhaps if you can have a discussion around G17, what are your views, Lizzie? Did you want to come in respect to that?
Yeah, it's my understanding that there's no objection in terms of highway grounds at all from the county council. So I would be very cautious about using that as a reason for refusal. Reading G17 section C.
So what about policy G2?
Policy G2, I think let's just get it up, just double check.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd be okay with policy G2, but not policy G17.
And would it stand muster? I'm just asking for a professional opinion.
I think it would be section C of G2 that you're referring to, and it's my understanding there's no objections again in terms of noise, odours or emissions or traffic. So in terms of the noise, from my personal experience dealing with dog training facilities and dog kennels, if you like, not the type for holidays, but more for the type rehabilitation, when you do go on site, there is very little noise. Dogs don't tend to bark unless they're stressed. And when they're being trained and they're being attention given to them, there's not much barking that goes on in those events. And that's from personal experience. Okay.
All right, thanks, Lizzie. Excuse me. So, Taz, we're looking at policy G2, section C. Okay, so that's the discussion over and done. So we're voting on the amendment to refuse the application on the grounds of policy G2 and to contest the appeal. That's what the first vote's for. That is for the amendment for refusal. Okay, so if we can go to the electronic votes.
Thank you, Chair. So members have actually decided to go against that. So in effect, we now would go to the vote in respect of not contesting the appeal.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so this vote is to not contest the appeal, which was proposed by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Chair. So
I can't think. Councillor Simpson. Oh, I press the wrong button.
thank you, Chair. So members have indicated that they had an opportunity to reach a decision on the Gables Farm application, they would have been minded to approve the planning permission for the change of use and ancillary works. In that regard, they do not wish to contest the appeal and instead provide recommendations on the imposition of conditions as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for attending this evening. I was going to wish Daniel Power all the best for the future, but it appears he's so sharpish to get away from South Ribble, he's already done one. So, but I do wish him all the very best for the future. He was only here for a very brief length of time, and I hope Kath Thomas will stay with us a little bit longer.